take up the pleadings that the client has drafted and filed with the court. We all know how to prep a case on the fly, I would hope. I did a lot of clinical hours in law school where we showed up and public defender just hands me a docket and says, ready, go, and you just have to make the arguments. And that's just kind of what you've got to do. You've got to learn how to, what we call tap dance. You just show up and dance and hope that the judge buys it, because your client has not had access to services prior, and so you've got to do a good, competent job with very little preparation. And you get very good at it, because at the end of the day, they all kind of start to seem the same. You hit all the same points. We have what's called empowered pro se, and that is where our court, in its infinite wisdom, created a very accessible tool to help you file your own family law case, because they were trying to help pro se litigants, right? Which created more pro se litigants. So if they choose to go that route, and some people in this new market are simply do-it-yourselfers. That's just the reality of today, and we as lawyers need to embrace that. If they're really determined to do it on their own, you're not going to talk them into paying you $10,000 to do it. You're just not, especially when LegalZoom exists, right? But there are those who simply need the advocacy side of what we can offer them. So Empowered Pro Se is a tool where I have the client go online and prepare their documents using the court forms, which cost $20. They bring it in, I pull up the 200 pages that this thing spits out, and then we go through and I help them correct things that they've entered and explain legal terminology to them so that they can get their case filed. And then the sliding scale that I mentioned, a hybrid contingent would be a billable hour where you set a low billable hourly rate that they pay you until the award is granted, and then you have a percentage of that award that you're given on a contingency, so that you get paid for the hours that you're working up front and as you go, instead of hoping someday you'll get paid out. So it's not a, if I don't win, I don't get paid situation. It's recognition for the work that I'm doing for you, whether you win or lose. This empowers lawyers to take cases that they otherwise wouldn't want to take. And so we have people getting access to justice who would be denied that access because their case is a coin flip, right? And we all know that private attorneys want to get some wins and they want to get those fees. So otherwise it's not worth their time and they can't stay in business. So we have to recognize that there's value in what we do. I'm taking up entirely too much time, so I'll go really quickly here and just wrap up. Other things we consider is whether the clients can handle alternative fee structures. There are a lot of things to look into: their level of education, their resourcefulness, problem-solving ability, access, if they can't get off work to show up for court dates, drug and alcohol addiction, domestic violence or victimization history, work schedules, child care. There are a lot of factors to consider, and these are all things that we dealt with on a daily basis and had to get creative. That meant appearing by phone or video, going to them if necessary, and again, these are things that bear a cost. So how do you get creative? Law firms in remote areas donating conference rooms so that we could go once a month. Judges being willing to staff their calendars for travel purposes. Language, we have translators who are willing to, interpreters who are willing to donate hours, things like that. So never accepting I can't do that as an answer, basically. Is it ethical? Will it prejudice the client? Everybody needs to refer to their state and local rules. And this presentation will be available so you all can read over those in more detail. What does the market look like? I mentioned the do-it-yourselfer. There's the justice gap we talked about. There is data now on how big the market is, so I would encourage you to all look around for some of that data. Building your business around it is the design that I mentioned earlier, really making decisions based around the idea that you're not going to be like everybody else so that you can do well at it. Informed consent from your clients is simply just getting your client to understand what you'll be doing and what you won't be doing. A lot of us are really bad at that. I don't know what it is. I think it's because we do it all day and we think it's all normal, but it's not for them. They have never done this before most of the time. If you want to do well at this, I think the number one thing is we were half social workers, right? So you got to own the counselor at law part of your title as well, not just the attorney. And owning it, meaning that you're going to be providing services to them that maybe you're not qualified to provide. And if you can't do that, finding those practitioners and linking your client up with them, such as housing services, therapy services, domestic violence associations, things like that. Data, and there's data. So make sure that you are tracking data, and if you don't know how to do that, go to your local business school. You will find somebody who's a statistician or who simply is weirdly into data. They are there, and I love them find yourself a nerd, bring them on, they'll do some volunteer work, they get credit for it through their school, and it won't cost you a dime. And that's what I did. And I somehow ended up with a PhD from Johns Hopkins, who went back to business school, and he was amazing. Metrics, tracking metrics, and then zombies. So zombies are clients who have fallen through the cracks. They haven't been contacted for a little while. We have a weekly report that would go out that would inform us if we had any zombies. So if you haven't entered any billable time on a client for X number of days, this will pop up as an alert. These are important considerations when you're dealing with especially a large caseload, which you're going to be doing in a nonprofit sector. So those are all of my quick tips, and all of these will be available. I'm also available at any of this contact information for more information. And if you know someone who's interested in forming a sliding scale law firm, that's pretty much the only service I'm offering right now through Open Legal, and hopefully we can continue to grow. We also host a nonprofit law firm directory, so you can see all of the ones in the country on the Open Legal Services website. And then there's the Consortium for Access to Justice, which is a nonprofit law firm and incubator organization. It's a national organization that hosts a conference every year. This year will be in Salt Lake City. Yay! Local. So thank you very much.
Just a couple of questions.
Sure.
Do you do any local fundraising, like your annual, black tie or something that brings in the community? Mm-hmm. And what percentage of your clients, after you do the assessment of all of their issues, mental illness or what have you, do you turn down?
Sure. So we do not do a big gala type of fundraiser, but we have our biggest grant giving organization would be banks. So we apply for grants under the Community Reinvestment Act, which not a lot of legal nonprofits do, and there's a lot of good money there. So Ally Bank, I think we've gotten, I want to say $30,000. So only 2%, well, maybe 4% of our annual revenue has come from grants, right? Because we weren't using it for operating costs. That was our goal, was to not do that. We were definitely going to have to revisit that in the future. But we had a trivia night for pub trivia where we had a fundraiser for that. We've done an annual push fundraiser right before the new year for firms and individuals looking for their tax deductions for the year, which was just a call campaign. We do CLEs, and I think our CLEs, which are still ongoing, are probably our most profitable because our bar charges $2 per credit for CLE. So if you sponsor your own CLE and you cover your costs with lunch, you charge $30 or something for one credit hour, you keep roughly $18 of that $30. And so, that's a good, $2,000 or $3,000 for relatively minimal preparation because the bar sort of handles everything. We just come up with the idea and get a couple people to volunteer to speak. And if you aim for the month of June right before they're due every other year, then you really get a lot of good participation. So for us, $2,000 is a huge get, right, for a donation. And then we have, of course, those $10,000 donations. We've also gotten funding from the University of Utah to place students as fellows in our organization. And that was a ramp-up type of fellowship where they were a permanent employee. It wasn't a temporary until their money ran out. It was just to cover their first couple of months of salary. And then they became, by that point, they had a full book of clients and were able to bill, and they were productive, and so then they became a regular employee. So that sort of hand-up, not hand-out sort of situation, I think, really helps the grant funds last a lot longer. And that's the sort of structure we'll be looking at for incubators. As far as client acceptance, other than conflict checks and what I call CRADAR, Crazy Radar, we have mostly accepted every client. Which was quite difficult because you really it was how many phones could you answer because they're just ringing off the hook, and all the phones go to me now that we don't have a full-time staffer, and I'm only a volunteer at this point, so there's a lot of them, and I'm having to reroute them to the other nonprofits in town, and so there is a huge need. I've paid, I think, maybe in 5 years $500 in advertising ever because it's just. There's so much need, the phones just ring off the hook. So we really accepted as many as we could, but we do have a risk assessment tool that we would use to determine whether a case was too risky for us to take. Things like how many former counsel have they had, that were not like unbundled counsel. How many orders to show cause have there been? Was there domestic violence? Is there drug? All of those questions to tell the lawyer if they were competent to take the case, or if the client was at risk as far as a bar complaint or non-payment, or simply sabotaging their own case to such a degree that it wasn't something we could fix. So, any other questions?